Strikers has all the style and confidence of Persona 5, plastered with bold colors and glittery character animations, a smooth, jazzy soundtrack. There's even a 30-hour story with most of the original cast returning. It walks and talks almost exactly like Persona 5, a game that isn't even on PC yet. But Strikers isn't Persona 5, and the comparison isn't flattering for it. Its social elements and combat aren't as fully featured, or its characters as deeply considered as Persona 5's, so any expectation of parity will lead to disappointment. Strikers is a wild but bloated visual novel with almost no room for expression or choice, and with some of the best turn-based combat in existence swapped out for repetitive action game button mashing. Strikers will give Persona 5 lovers some painful whiplash. In Strikers, you return as the same nameless high school student and reunite with the Phantom Thieves, your group of friends that face down the invisible psychic threats plaguing the metaverse in Persona 5. It sounds complex, but the Persona series just dresses up social and cultural issues in surreal fantasy garb. The big bads have shifted from greedy adults to the more intangible effect of social media on young people, with villains building massive dungeons out of ego, from Hot Topic-infused nightmare amusement parks to goofy fantasy castles ripped from the pages of contrived young adult literature. These scenes, split between a real-world road trip through Japan, make Strikers sound like the ideal side story, a special summer reunion episode, and the story is fine, it's just missing Persona 5's special ingredient. In Persona 5, the social simulation was the heart of the game. Going to school, plotting out who I'll hang out with afterwards, paying attention to what my friends like and what their problems are, so when the time arises I know the right thing to say. My schedule, set against the ticking clock, created tension and forced me to choose who I made lasting relationships with. In Strikers, the daily rhythm doesn't exist. There are no social links to tend to carefully. I'm just occasionally gifted upgrade points after certain scenes, most of which feed into buffs for the bland combat. More on that in a minute. Dialogue choices rarely matter, and if they do, there's no feedback saying so. Passing time in Strikers gets monotonous quickly, with endless dialogue and scene changes devoid of interaction. It really coasts on the hope that you loved Persona 5 and have bottomless patience, because besides a few limp character beats, Strikers has few reasons to see it through. The premise might be the only reason I stuck around. I wish I had something so simple and cool to take a dig at the effects of social media and data collection on daily life through the lens of jazz, anime, and street art when I was younger. I mean, the first boss is an influencer who turns into a monstrous rabbit at the center of a deranged amusement park, and the rabbit's big, fluffy tail has a damn mouth. I don't know what that contributes to regarding the theme, other than it makes Strikers more interesting to look at, while characters deliver long, moralizing messages to one another about influence and popularity and the true meaning of friendship. Yeah, but it works, you know? Most of my attention was spent waiting to see Strikers' next wild monster or trippy environment take goofy jabs at insidious social media design. It was a lot of fun. Nothing about Strikers' story is particularly sharp or deep, but for a younger audience, its critiques could feel revelatory. It's an optimistic story too, a road trip with old friends that encourages action and hope in the face of seemingly implacable, ages-old institutions. Strikers can be cute as hell, but the shine comes off a bit while beating down the same blur of grunts and monsters time and time again. Koei Tecmo's here with that divisive Dynasty Warrior style combat, including the finicky camera that never seems capable of highlighting the guy about to bust out a huge attack just out of sight. Light attack, heavy attack, dodge and repeat forever, you know the stuff. Even the Berserk spin-off couldn't get me to like it. You're not working through massive battlefields, murdering millions for control points this time, though. In Strikers, combat is often initiated like it is in Persona 5 or most other JRPGs. You'll see an enemy wandering around a dungeon, bump into it, and suddenly the room's a fire hazard, packed with dozens of enemies. fights are just pockets of Dynasty Warriors action, though. Repetitive melee combat propped up by a persona summoning system that uses spirit points over precious HP for area of effect damage, opening up enemies for special attacks. There's some amount of strategy involved, but the action really amounts to managing a crowd, choosing the most efficient persona attack to perform critical damage on as many enemies as possible, and repeating. Enemies respawn in dungeons too, ensuring you'll get to know the basic combo all too well. Strikers never slows down to truly teach whatever nuances there are in the combat either. I got through it all with the same mashy tactics I learned in LEGO Star Wars 15 years ago. Sometimes I'll stun a group of enemies and get to pull off a special move or an all-out attack, treating me to a cool animation, but then it's back to the mines, hacking away at enemies until there are no more to hack away at. Compare that to Persona 5, where the streamlined turn-based combat makes meaningful use of every character in their personas, forcing the player into challenging scenarios to puzzle their way out of. I can remember many distinct fights from my 100 plus hours of Persona 5, but none from the slurry of button mashing to delete legions of guys in my 30 hours with Striker. It's odd to make a game so faithful to the style of Persona 5, only to jam in something so clearly out of place and to expect diehard lovers of the social, turn-based RPG to get along with it like old pals. Something is wearing the skin of my friend, telling me nothing's wrong, that no, I'm being weird. I worry that the Persona 5 evangelizers drawn to Striker's warm, familiar embrace are about to hit a brick wall of boredom. There are far better third-person combat games out there. Better RPGs, better visual novels. Sure, none quite look or sound like Strikers, except for Persona 5. But you'll be fine letting the memory of Persona 5 stand on its own. If you can ever play it.
Erode and destroy hearts of good souls in the dark.